Lila, an 8-year-old girl with a bright smile and a creative mind, spent most of her afternoons sketching in her notebook. She loved to draw vibrant pictures of magical worlds, complete with sparkling rainbows and playful animals. Her room was filled with these joyful illustrations, taped to the walls like a private gallery. To her mother, Amanda, the drawings were a sign of Lila's happiness and active imagination, a comforting thought for someone who worked long hours as a nurse to support her family. Mark, Amanda's husband and Lila's stepfather, often took care of Lila while Amanda was at work. To everyone outside their home, Mark appeared to be a doting father figure. He always had a warm smile at family gatherings and was quick to volunteer when someone needed help. Amanda trusted him completely. But lately, Lila had become quieter, her usual chatter replaced by a hesitant silence. Amanda chalked it up to Lila's adjustment to her demanding schedule, assuming the little girl just missed spending time with her. One evening, while tidying Lila's room, Amanda stumbled upon a piece of paper partially hidden under the bed. Curious, she picked it up and found a drawing unlike any she had seen from her daughter before. It wasn't colorful or cheerful like the others. Instead, it showed a small figure sitting alone in a corner, surrounded by dark, looming shapes with sharp edges. The small figure had tears drawn streaking down its face. Amanda frowned, trying to make sense of the picture. She walked into the living room, holding the drawing in her hand. "Lila, sweetie," she called softly. "What's this drawing about?" Lila, sitting cross-legged on the floor with her sketchbook, looked up but didn't meet her mother's gaze. "It's just a picture," she mumbled, pulling her sketchbook closer to her chest. "Is it something from a story you're making up?" Amanda asked, crouching to Lila's level. "Those shapes look scary." Lila hesitated, her small fingers fidgeting with the edge of her sketchbook. "It's about when I'm alone," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. Amanda tilted her head, confused but not alarmed. "Alone? Like in your room?" Lila shrugged and changed the subject, asking if she could have a snack. Amanda decided not to press further, chalking it up to her daughter's active imagination. But later that night, as she sat in the kitchen sipping tea, Amanda couldn't shake the unsettling feeling the drawing had left her with. The darkness in the picture didn't feel like a child's fantasy, it felt heavy, like it carried a message she didn't yet understand. Meanwhile, in her room, Lila tucked her sketchbook under her pillow. She wasn't ready to share the full story yet. For now, her drawings were her way of speaking the words she couldn't bring herself to say. Amanda couldn't stop thinking about Lila's drawing. Though she tried to convince herself it was just a child's imaginative expression, something about the dark shapes and Lila's hesitant response lingered in her mind. Over the next few days, Amanda began to pay closer attention to her daughter's behavior. It didn't take long for her to notice changes she had previously overlooked. Lila had grown more reserved, her cheerful chatter replaced by quiet nods and short answers. She seemed to avoid being in the same room as Mark, retreating to her bedroom whenever he entered. Amanda also noticed Lila flinch slightly when Mark called her name, something that had never happened before. One evening, Amanda returned home early from work. She found Mark watching TV in the living room and Lila sitting on the floor in a corner of her room, sketching in her notebook. Amanda sat on the bed and gently asked, "What are you drawing, sweetie?" Lila hesitated but eventually handed her the sketchbook. The page displayed a series of jagged shapes surrounding a small, stick figure girl. In the center, a large shadow towered over the smaller figure. Amanda felt her stomach tighten. "Lila, what's this one about?" she asked, keeping her voice steady. "It's just a drawing," Lila said softly, pulling her knees to her chest. Amanda studied her daughter's face, noticing the tension in her small shoulders and the way she avoided making eye contact. A chill ran through her. "Is something bothering you?" she asked gently. Lila shook her head quickly, too quickly, and grabbed the sketchbook back, flipping the page as if to move the conversation along. Amanda didn't push further, but the growing unease in her heart was undeniable. That night, as she lay in bed next to Mark, Amanda found herself staring at the ceiling, replaying Lila's hesitant words and the shadowy figures in her drawings. She felt a gnawing worry she couldn't name, a sense that something wasn't right. The following afternoon, Amanda found herself searching through Lila's room while her daughter was at school. She hated invading Lila's privacy, but her instincts told her she needed to understand what was going on. Inside Lila's desk drawer, Amanda discovered another drawing. This one was even more unsettling than the last. It depicted a small figure sitting alone in a room, its face streaked with tears. The door to the room was drawn closed, with sharp lines suggesting it was locked. Amanda's heart sank. She wanted to dismiss the drawings as imaginative or meaningless, but they were beginning to feel like puzzle pieces, each revealing a fraction of a story she wasn't sure she wanted to see fully. When Lila came home that evening, Amanda tried again to broach the subject. She knelt down beside her daughter, who was unpacking her backpack, and said softly, "Honey, I want you to know you can tell me anything. If something is bothering you, I'll always listen." Lila froze for a moment before looking up. "I'm fine, Mommy," she said quickly, then gave a small, unconvincing smile. "I'm just tired." Amanda hugged her tightly, whispering, "I'm here for you, no matter what." But as Lila walked away, Amanda couldn't help but feel the walls between them growing thicker. Lila wasn't ready to talk, and Amanda didn't yet understand what her daughter's drawings were trying to say. But deep in her heart, she knew she needed to find out, before it was too late. Amanda's concern for Lila deepened with each passing day. The once vibrant little girl seemed to shrink into herself, her cheerful voice replaced by quiet murmurs. Amanda's instincts screamed at her that something wasn't right, but the pieces weren't fitting together. The drawings haunted her, their shadowy figures and locked doors lingering in her mind. One Saturday afternoon, while Amanda was cleaning the house, she noticed Lila sitting on the living room floor with her sketchbook open. Lila was hunched over, her pencil moving with quick, frantic strokes. Amanda tried to keep her distance, not wanting to interrupt, but curiosity pulled her closer. She stood silently for a moment, watching the picture come to life. This time, the drawing showed a small figure curled up in a corner, while a larger, shadowy figure loomed over it, its jagged hands reaching out. The details sent a shiver through Amanda. The small figure's face had tears streaming down, just like the first drawing she'd found. The shadow's expression was drawn with harsh, angular lines, its presence overwhelming the little figure. Amanda couldn't hold back any longer. "Lila, honey, can I see what you're drawing?" Lila froze, her hand stopping mid-stroke. Slowly, she closed the sketchbook and hugged it tightly to her chest. "It's not done yet," she mumbled, avoiding Amanda's eyes. Amanda crouched down, her tone soft. "You know you can tell me anything, right? If something's wrong, I want to help." Lila shifted uncomfortably, her fingers gripping the edge of the sketchbook. "It's just a drawing," she said quietly, her voice barely audible. "It's nothing." Amanda didn't press her, but she couldn't shake the feeling that the drawings were more than just pictures. She resolved to look through Lila's sketchbook later, hoping it might reveal something Lila couldn't say out loud. That evening, while Lila was asleep, Amanda retrieved the sketchbook from her daughter's desk. Flipping through the pages, she found more drawings that made her chest tighten. One image showed a small figure sitting alone in a room, the door drawn with thick, black lines as if to emphasize its impenetrability. Another showed the same figure with its hands pressed against its face, as jagged shapes surrounded it. The images were increasingly clear, telling a story Amanda couldn't ignore. Her hands trembled as she closed the sketchbook, tears welling in her eyes. Whatever Lila was going through, she was trying to express it the only way she knew how. Amanda realized that her daughter wasn't just drawing random shapes, she was crying out for help. The next morning, Amanda approached Lila cautiously, determined to create a safe space for her to open up. She found Lila sitting at the kitchen table, coloring quietly. Amanda sat across from her, setting the sketchbook gently on the table. "Lila," she began, her voice calm but firm, "I've been looking at your drawings. They're very detailed, but some of them make me worried. Can you tell me what they mean?" Lila's eyes widened, and her small hands gripped her pencil tightly. She didn't respond, staring at the table instead. Amanda reached across the table, placing a hand gently over Lila's. "Sweetheart, I love you so much, and I want to help you. Whatever's on your mind, you can tell me. I promise, you're safe." Lila hesitated, tears brimming in her eyes. She opened her mouth as if to speak but then shook her head, pulling her hand away. Amanda's heart broke at the sight of her daughter's struggle. She knew Lila wasn't ready to talk yet, but the drawings had shown her enough to understand that something was deeply wrong. As she hugged Lila tightly, Amanda made a silent vow she would find out the truth and protect her daughter, no matter what it took. Amanda couldn't ignore the drawings anymore. They were no longer just unsettling images, they were pieces of a puzzle her daughter couldn't put into words. Her unease grew each time she thought of Lila's hesitance to explain, and Amanda knew it was time to take action. But Lila was fragile right now, and Amanda didn't want to push too hard and risk making her retreat even further. She decided to approach the situation carefully, watching, listening, and piecing things together on her own. The following morning, Amanda dropped Lila off at school and called into work to request the day off. Once she was home alone, she sat at the kitchen table with Lila's sketchbook, flipping through the pages one by one. Each drawing seemed more haunting than the last. One page showed a small figure standing behind a locked door, with bold lines drawn over and over again to reinforce the image of separation. Another page depicted jagged shapes looming over the same figure, their sharp edges seemingly closing in. Amanda placed the sketchbook aside, rubbing her temples. The message felt clear: Lila was trying to express something that frightened her. But what? And why wasn't she able to say it out loud? That afternoon, Amanda decided to observe Lila more closely when she returned home from school. She wanted to understand how Lila interacted with Mark and whether there were any patterns to her behavior. As Amanda prepared dinner, she kept an eye on the living room, where Lila sat quietly, scribbling in her sketchbook. Mark sat nearby, flipping through a magazine, but Amanda noticed how Lila seemed tense, her shoulders stiff and her head tilted downward, as though she was trying to make herself invisible. When Mark got up to leave the room, Amanda saw Lila visibly relax. The subtle shift in her posture was like a breath she had been holding finally released. Amanda's heart ached at the realization. "Lila," Amanda said softly, walking over to her. "How was your day at school?" "It was okay," Lila replied, still focused on her sketchbook. She hesitated, then added, "I had art class today." "That's wonderful. What did you draw?" Amanda asked, sitting beside her. "Just flowers," Lila murmured, flipping a page in her book to hide what she had been working on. Amanda didn't press her, but she couldn't ignore the fact that Lila's drawings at home were vastly different from the ones she mentioned at school. At school, she spoke of flowers and sunny landscapes. At home, her art was filled with darkness and distress. It was a stark contrast that Amanda couldn't overlook. Later that evening, after Lila went to bed, Amanda sought advice. She called her close friend Melissa, who was a school counselor, and described the situation without going into too much detail. "It sounds like she's expressing something she's too afraid to say," Melissa said gently. "Children often communicate through art when they can't put their feelings into words. Have you noticed any changes in how she behaves around others?" Amanda thought for a moment. "She's withdrawn, especially around Mark. She avoids him as much as she can." Melissa paused. "Amanda, I don't want to alarm you, but this might be something serious. You should consider reaching out to someone who can help you and Lila figure this out together, a professional who can talk to her in a way that feels safe." Amanda nodded, though the suggestion made her stomach twist. If Melissa was right, the situation might be bigger than Amanda could handle on her own. She needed to protect her daughter, but the thought of confronting whatever was happening left her feeling both determined and terrified. The next day, Amanda decided to keep Lila home from school, framing it as a mom and daughter day. They baked cookies, played board games, and spent time drawing together. Amanda hoped the relaxed atmosphere might help Lila open up, but her daughter remained cautious. Even as they laughed over their poorly shaped cookies, Amanda could sense the wall Lila had built around herself. By the end of the day, Amanda had decided on her next step. If Lila wouldn't or couldn't tell her what was wrong, Amanda would need to create a space where Lila felt safe enough to share. And if that didn't work, she would find someone who could help her daughter express the words she seemed too afraid to say. As Amanda tucked Lila into bed that night, she kissed her forehead and whispered, "I'll always protect you, sweetheart. No matter what." Lila smiled faintly, her eyes heavy with sleep. "I know, Mommy." But Amanda knew that simply being there for her daughter wasn't enough anymore. The drawings, the silences, and the tension, it was all leading to something Amanda could no longer ignore. She had to get to the bottom of it, even if it meant confronting truths she wasn't ready to face. Amanda woke up with a firm resolve. The pieces were all there, the drawings, Lila's silence, her tense behavior around Mark. It was time to stop avoiding the truth and face whatever was happening. Amanda didn't know exactly what she would find, but she knew her first priority was to protect her daughter. That evening, Amanda waited until Mark went out to run an errand. She sat Lila down at the kitchen table, her voice soft but steady. "Lila, sweetheart, we need to talk. I've been looking at your drawings, and I think you're trying to tell me something." Lila's small hands gripped the edge of the table. "They're just drawings," she murmured, her gaze fixed on the floor. Amanda reached across the table, taking Lila's hands gently in hers. "I know they're more than that," she said. "I see the shadows and the shapes. I see how scared the little girl in the drawings looks. And I've noticed how you act around Mark. You don't have to say anything right now, but I need you to know that you're safe. I'm here for you, no matter what." Lila's lip quivered, and her eyes brimmed with tears. She hesitated, then pulled her hands away, burying her face in her arms. Amanda moved closer, wrapping her arms around her daughter, waiting patiently as Lila's small shoulders shook with quiet sobs. After what felt like an eternity, Lila lifted her head, her tear-streaked face pale and trembling. "Mommy," she whispered, her voice cracking, "I don't like being alone with him." Amanda's heart broke at those words, but she stayed calm for Lila's sake. "What do you mean, sweetie?" she asked gently. Lila hesitated, her hands fidgeting in her lap. "He makes me feel scared," she finally admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Amanda's chest tightened. She wanted to press for more details but could see that Lila was struggling. Instead, she asked softly, "Is that why you draw the shadows?" Lila nodded, her eyes filling with tears again. "I don't know how to say it," she murmured. "It's just easier to draw." Amanda hugged Lila tightly, stroking her hair. "Thank you for telling me," she said. "You're so brave, and I'm so proud of you. You don't have to explain everything right now. I promise I'll take care of this, okay?" Lila sniffled and nodded against her mother's shoulder. Later that night, when Mark returned home, Amanda was waiting for him. Her heart pounded as she stood in the living room, arms crossed. She had spent the hours since her conversation with Lila trying to process everything, and now she felt a mix of anger and determination. "We need to talk," Amanda said, her voice firm. Mark looked surprised but shrugged, setting his keys on the counter. "What's going on?" "It's about Lila," Amanda said, stepping closer. "She's been drawing things that tell me she's scared. Scared of being alone with you." Mark's face darkened. "What are you talking about?" he said defensively. "She's a kid. Kids have imaginations." Amanda shook her head. "This isn't just imagination, Mark. Something's wrong, and I believe her." Mark's expression turned cold. "So, what?" "You're accusing me of something," he said, his voice rising. Amanda's jaw tightened. "I'm not accusing you of anything. But until I know exactly what's going on, I'm not going to ignore my instincts. And I'm not going to let you be alone with her anymore." Mark's face twisted with anger, but Amanda stood her ground. "If you have nothing to hide, you'll understand," she said, her voice unwavering. "But if you do, you should know I'll do whatever it takes to protect my daughter." The silence that followed was heavy and tense. Mark eventually stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind him. Amanda's hands trembled, but she felt a sense of relief for the first time in days. She had taken the first step, and she wouldn't stop until Lila was safe. That night, Amanda slept lightly, her thoughts racing. She resolved to contact someone who could help, a counselor, a child psychologist, or even the authorities. Whatever it took, she would make sure Lila's voice was heard and that her daughter would never feel unsafe again. Upstairs, Lila slept soundly for the first time in weeks, knowing her mother believed her. The next morning, Amanda woke early, her mind set on what she needed to do. She called a family support center she had found online the night before. After explaining the situation, the counselor on the other end reassured Amanda that she had done the right thing by listening to her instincts and validating Lila's feelings. "I'm so proud of her for trying to communicate through her drawings," the counselor said. "It takes a lot of courage for children to express themselves, even in small ways. We can help her feel safe and begin to heal." By the end of the call, Amanda had scheduled an appointment for Lila to meet with a child psychologist. She also made arrangements to speak with a legal advisor about the next steps to ensure Lila's protection. With every decision, Amanda felt a growing sense of determination. She had failed to notice the signs before, but now she would do everything in her power to make things right. Later that day, Amanda sat Lila down at the kitchen table. "Sweetheart," she began gently, "I talked to someone today, a person who helps kids like you. They want to meet you and see your drawings, so they can help us figure out what to do next." Lila looked hesitant but nodded slowly. "Will it hurt?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "No, honey," Amanda said, taking her hand. "They just want to talk to you and help you feel safe. You don't have to say anything you're not ready to, okay?" Lila nodded again, a small flicker of relief passing across her face. That afternoon, Amanda and Lila packed a few belongings and left the house, staying with Amanda's sister, Maggie, until things were sorted. Maggie welcomed them with open arms, her home providing a warm and reassuring environment for Lila. For the first time in weeks, Amanda saw her daughter smile, a small but meaningful sign that things were changing. The meeting with the psychologist a few days later was another turning point. Lila brought her sketchbook and, with Amanda by her side, slowly began explaining what her drawings meant. The psychologist listened attentively, praising Lila for her bravery and creativity. Through careful, supportive questions, they were able to piece together a clearer picture of Lila's experiences. Amanda felt a mix of emotions: heartbreak over what her daughter had endured, pride in Lila's courage, and determination to seek justice. After the session, the psychologist helped Amanda connect with local authorities to formally report the situation. Amanda's hands shook as she signed the documents, but she knew this was the right step. "This will ensure Lila is safe," the officer assured her. "You're doing the right thing." As the days passed, Amanda noticed a change in Lila. Away from the tension of their home, Lila began to open up more, both to Amanda and to Maggie. Her drawings, once filled with darkness and jagged shapes, started to feature brighter colors and happier scenes, pictures of flowers, sunshine, and even stick figures holding hands. Amanda knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. The legal process was just beginning, and there were still hurdles to face. But with every step forward, she felt stronger, bolstered by the knowledge that Lila's safety and happiness were her top priority. One evening, as Amanda tucked Lila into bed at Maggie's house, Lila looked up at her and whispered, "Thank you for listening, Mommy." Amanda's throat tightened with emotion. She leaned down, kissing Lila's forehead. "Thank you for being brave, sweetheart," she replied. "You're my hero." Lila smiled, a genuine, heartwarming smile that reminded Amanda of the vibrant little girl she was before all this began. As Amanda left the room, she felt a renewed sense of hope. The shadows that once loomed over their lives were starting to fade, replaced by the bright promise of a safer, happier future. Months passed, and the pieces of Amanda and Lila's lives slowly began to fall into place. Their days were no longer weighed down by fear and tension. Instead, they were filled with small moments of healing and joy that Amanda cherished more than ever. Lila had begun regular sessions with the psychologist, where she continued to use her drawings as a way to process her feelings. Each session seemed to peel away a layer of the sadness and fear she had carried for so long. Her drawings, once dominated by shadows and jagged lines, now featured brighter themes, fields of flowers, smiling suns, and stick figures holding hands. Amanda, too, sought support through counseling. She found solace in speaking with someone who helped her work through the guilt and self-doubt she had harbored. The counselor reminded her that recognizing the signs and taking action was the most important thing she could have done for her daughter. "I can't change the past," Amanda admitted during one session, her voice thick with emotion. "But I can be the mother Lila needs now." "And you are," the counselor reassured her. "You've given her a safe space to heal, and that's everything." Meanwhile, the legal process against Mark progressed steadily. Though it was emotionally draining to relive the details, Amanda stood firm. Her testimony, combined with Lila's drawings and the psychologist's professional insights, painted a compelling picture of what had happened. The system was slow, but it was moving, and Amanda took comfort in knowing justice was within reach. Despite the challenges, life in Maggie's home brought a sense of stability and warmth that had been missing for too long. Maggie, always cheerful and supportive, became a beloved figure in Lila's daily life. Together, they baked cookies, played board games, and spent hours coloring at the kitchen table. Amanda watched her daughter laugh more freely, her spirit slowly returning to its former brightness. One sunny afternoon, Amanda and Lila visited a local park. Armed with sketchbooks and pencils, they found a quiet spot beneath a large oak tree. Lila began drawing immediately, her tiny hands moving confidently across the paper. "What are you working on today?" Amanda asked, leaning over to peek. Lila smiled and held up her drawing. It was a picture of a house surrounded by colorful flowers. Two stick figures stood in front, holding hands, a tall one labeled Mommy and a smaller one labeled Me. Amanda's chest swelled with emotion. "That's beautiful, sweetie," she said. "Is this our new house?" Lila nodded. "One day, when we find it." Amanda hugged her tightly, her heart full of gratitude. "We will," she promised. "And it'll be filled with love and light, just like this picture." That evening, after putting Lila to bed, Amanda sat alone in the living room with her own journal. She wrote about the journey they had taken together, the pain, the fear, and the small triumphs that had brought them to this moment. She thought about the strength it had taken for Lila to speak through her art and the courage it had taken for Amanda to act. In the quiet of the room, Amanda allowed herself to feel proud. Proud of her daughter for her resilience, proud of herself for listening, and proud of the new life they were building together. The story ends on a bright and hopeful note. Lila, once weighed down by fear, had reclaimed her joy, her art now a reflection of her newfound peace. Amanda, too, had found strength in their shared journey, her love for her daughter guiding her through the darkest times. Their lives weren't perfect, but they were filled with love, hope, and the promise of brighter days ahead. Together, they had proven that even in the darkest moments, light could break through.